Danny Cole knew he had made a terrible mistake the moment his truck engine died. The old vehicle had served him well for 15 years, but it chose the worst possible moment to finally give up. He turned the key again and again, but the engine only clicked and went silent. Through the windshield, he could see the sky turning an ugly shade of green and purple. Hurricane was coming, and it was coming fast. The evacuation order had come too late. Danny had been finishing a carpentry job on the other side of town when his phone buzzed with the emergency alert. By the time he loaded his tools and started driving, the roads were already clogged with panicked families trying to escape. He had taken the back roads through the forest, hopping to avoid the traffic. Now he was stuck on a dirt path with no help in sight and a monster storm bearing down on him. Danny grabbed his backpack from the passenger seat. Inside were some protein bars, 2 bottles of water, a flashlight, and a first aid kit. He had thrown them together quickly before leaving his small house near the coast. He had lived alone in that house for 2 years now, ever since his wife Lisa had passed away. Sometimes he wondered why he stayed in a place with so many memories, but he never found the strength to leave. The wind was picking up now, bending the trees around him like they were made of rubber. Danny climbed out of the truck and immediately felt the force of the approaching storm. Leaves and small branches flew past his face. He had to find shelter, and he had to find it now. He ran into the forest, not knowing where he was going but knowing he could not stay in the open. The trees provided some protection from the wind, but he could hear them groaning and cracking above him. Soon even they would not be able to stand against the hurricane. Danny pushed forward, his heart pounding in his chest and his lungs burning from the effort. That was when he saw it, a strange metal door built into the side of a small hill. It looked old, covered in dirt and vines, but the metal itself was smooth and shiny in a way that seemed wrong. Danny had lived in this area his whole life, and he had never heard of any bunker out here. The military had some old installations along the coast, but nothing this far inland. He did not have time to wonder about it. The sky was growing darker by the second, and the wind was now strong enough to push him sideways. Danny grabbed the handle of the door and pulled. It did not move. He pulled again, putting all his weight into it. The door groaned and then slowly swung open, revealing a dark passage leading down into the earth. Danny did not hesitate. He stepped inside and pulled the door shut behind him just as the full force of hurricane hit the forest above. He could hear trees falling and the terrible roar of the wind, but down here he was safe. The walls of the passage seemed to absorb the sound, making everything feel distant and muffled. He turned on his flashlight and looked around. The passage was made of the same strange metal as the door, smooth and seamless without any visible bolts or welds. The walls were covered in symbols that Danny did not recognize. They were not letters from any language he knew. They curved and spiraled in patterns that made his eyes hurt if he stared at them too long. Danny walked deeper into the bunker, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The passage opened into a large chamber filled with strange objects. There were machines of some kind, but they were dark and dead, covered in a thick layer of dust. Containers lined the walls, filled with what looked like dried plants or maybe some kind of food that had rotted away long ago. The air smelled stale and old, but there was another smell underneath it, something organic and unfamiliar. He moved through the chamber slowly, trying to understand what he was seeing. This was not a military bunker. This was not anything built by humans. The realization crept over him like cold water, making his skin prickle with fear. He had found something that should not exist, something from somewhere else. Then he heard the voice. It came from deeper in the bunker, from a doorway on the far side of the chamber. The voice was weak and raspy, barely more than a whisper, but Danny heard every word clearly. "My fast ends today." Danny stopped moving. His hand tightened on the flashlight until his knuckles turned white. Every instinct told him to run, to go back to the door and take his chances with the hurricane. But something held him in place. The voice had not sounded threatening. It had sounded tired. It had sounded like someone who had been waiting for a very long time. He thought about Lisa. He thought about the last days of her illness when she had been too weak to leave her bed. He remembered sitting beside her, holding her hand, listening to her breathing grow slower and softer. He had not run then. He had stayed with her until the end because that was what you did when someone needed you. Danny took a deep breath and walked toward the doorway. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing another chamber beyond. This one was smaller than the first, and in the center was a raised platform like a bed or an altar. Something lay on that platform, something that was definitely not human. The creature was tall and thin, with limbs that seemed too long for its body. Its skin was pale and almost transparent, showing darker shapes underneath that might have been veins or organs. Its head was smooth and hairless, and its eyes were large and dark, reflecting the light from Danny's flashlight like pools of black water. It was looking at him. Despite its obvious weakness, despite the fact that it seemed barely able to move, it was watching him with an intelligence that Danny could feel in his bones. "You are human," the creature said. Its voice was clearer now, though still weak. "You should not be here." Danny swallowed hard. His mouth was dry and his heart was racing, but he did not run. He stood in the doorway of that strange chamber, deep underground while a hurricane raged above, and he looked at a being from another world. "Neither should you," he said finally, "but here we are." The creature made a sound that might have been a laugh, though it turned into a cough halfway through. Its chest rose and fell with obvious effort, and Danny could see that it was in bad shape. Whatever this thing was, it was dying. And Danny Cole, a simple carpenter from Florida who had lost everything he loved 2 years ago, made a decision. He was not going to let it die alone. Danny stepped further into the chamber, keeping his flashlight aimed at the ground so he would not blind the creature. Up close, he could see just how bad its condition was. The skin was stretched tight over bones that jutted out at sharp angles. The large dark eyes were sunken and dull. Around the platform were scattered empty containers, and Danny understood that whatever had been inside them was long gone. "I am called," the creature said. Its voice was soft, each word seeming to cost it great effort. "I am, you do not know this word. Your species has not yet learned of us." Danny set down his backpack and crouched beside the platform. He could feel the strangeness of the moment pressing down on him, the impossible weight of what was happening. He was talking to an alien, an actual being from another world. Part of him wanted to laugh at how absurd it all was, but the creature looked so weak and tired that laughter felt wrong. "My name is Danny," he said. "I found this place by accident. There is a hurricane outside, a big storm. I needed shelter." Made a small movement that might have been a nod. "I know of your storms. I have been here for a very long time. I have felt many storms pass over this place." "How long?" Danny asked. "In your counting of time, more than 200 years. Danny stared at the creature, trying to understand what he was hearing. 200 years. This being had been lying here in the darkness while the world above changed and grew. While his great-great-grandparents were being born and living and dying, this creature had been waiting underground. "Why?" he asked. "Why would anyone stay in a place like this for so long?" His chest rose in what looked like a sigh. "It is our way, the sacred fast. Among my people, certain individuals are chosen for a great honor. We are placed in hidden locations across many worlds. We are left alone to meditate and to starve. If we survive until the designated time, we are blessed by the stars. If we die, our spirits join the eternal darkness." Danny felt a chill that had nothing to do with the underground cold. "You were left here to starve on purpose." "Yes, it is a trial of spirit and will. The body weakens, but the mind must remain strong. Through suffering we find truth. Through isolation we find connection to the greater universe." Paused, and Danny could see its thin hands trembling slightly. "The fast was to last 200 of your years. 3 days ago that time ended. A ship was supposed to come for me. It did not come." "What happened to it?" "I do not know. Perhaps it was destroyed. Perhaps my people have forgotten me. Perhaps something has changed in the galaxy during my isolation. I have no way of knowing. The communication systems in this place failed many years ago." Danny looked around the chamber with new understanding. The dead machines, the empty containers, the dried remnants of whatever food they had provided for the very end of the fast. All of it was supposed to lead to a rescue that never happened. "So you completed the fast," Danny said slowly. "You survived, but then you just kept waiting." "What else could I do? I had no way to leave, no way to call for help. I used the last of the food that was left for my recovery. I waited for as long as I could, but now my body has nothing left to give." Eyes closed for a moment, and Danny saw how much effort it took for the creature to open them again. It was fatting, slipping away piece by piece. He had seen that look before, in the hospital room where Lisa had spent her final days. It was the look of someone whose fight was nearly over. "Your people," Danny said, "they do this to their own kind. They leave them alone to suffer and die in the dark." "It is an honor," replied, but there was something in its voice that sounded less certain than before. "The greatest among us are chosen. We accept the trial willingly." Did you want this? The question hung in the air between them, was silent for a long time, and Danny could see something shifting in those dark eyes. A crack in the certainty that had sustained the creature through 2 centuries of isolation. I was young when I was chosen, said finally. I believed what I was taught. I believed that this was the highest purpose it could achieve. But in the years since, alone in the darkness, I have had much time to think. I have wondered if purpose and suffering are truly the same thing. I have wondered if my people are wise or simply cruel. Danny reached out and touched the edge of the platform. It was cool and smooth under his fingers. Where I come from, he said, we have a saying, that which does not kill you makes you stronger, but I have never believed it. Sometimes suffering just hurts. Sometimes it just takes things away from you. Eyes focused on him with sudden intensity. You speak as one who has known loss. My wife died 2 years ago, cancer. She was sick for a long time before the end. I watched her fade away day by day, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Danny felt the old grief stirring in his chest, but he did not push it down. I used to think that losing her would make me stronger somehow, that I would come out the other side as a better person. But I did not. I just became a man who lives alone and talks to himself and wonders what the point of anything is. Yet you are here, said softly. You found a dying stranger in the darkness and you did not run. Why? Danny thought about the question. He thought about the moment when he heard the voice and how every instinct had told him to flee. He thought about how he had walked forward anyway, into the unknown, because something in him refused to turn away from someone in need. Because no one should die alone, he said. Not if there is anyone nearby who can sit with them. That is just basic human decency. Made that sound again, the one that was almost like a laugh. Basic. You say this as if it is simple, as if it is easy. I have studied many species during my training. I have learned about the civilizations that fill the galaxy. What you call basic is something most of them have never understood. The bunker shook slightly as something heavy crashed to the ground above. The hurricane was still raging, still tearing apart the forest and everything in it. But down here, in this strange metal chamber, Danny sat beside a dying alien and felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Hours passed in the bunker. Danny lost track of time without any way to see the sky or check his phone, which had died long ago. The hurricane continued to rage above them, and every so often the walls would vibrate with the force of something large falling. But the bunker held strong. Whatever material they had used to build this place, it was made to last. Danny sat on the floor beside the platform, his back against the wall and his flashlight propped up to provide some light. He had turned it off several times to save the battery, but each time the darkness had felt too heavy, too complete. He needed to see something, even if it was just the dim outlines of this impossible place. Drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes the creature would speak clearly, telling Danny about thee and its purple skies and endless forests of crystalline trees. Other times would mumble in a language Danny could not understand, words that rose and fell like music. And sometimes there was only silence, broken by the shallow sound of labored breathing. During one of the quiet periods, Danny opened his backpack and looked at what was inside. The protein bars and water bottles seemed so ordinary now, so small and insignificant in this chamber full of alien technology. But they were what he had, and they might be enough. He said softly, "Can you hear me?" The creature's eyes opened slowly. "I hear you, Danny, though my strength fades with each passing moment. I have food and water, not much but enough to help you recover some strength." It was quiet for a long moment. Then it spoke, and its voice carried a weight of centuries. "I cannot accept. The trial forbids outside aid. To take what you offer would be to fail everything I have endured." Danny felt frustration rising in his chest. "The trial is over. You said so yourself. It ended 3 days ago. The rescue did not come. The ending was not completed in the proper way. To accept help now would be to admit that the entire fast was worthless, that my suffering meant nothing." "That is not true." Danny stood up and moved closer to the platform, looking down at the frail creature that lay there. "Listen to me. I am just a carpenter from a small town. I do not know anything about your people or your traditions, but I know one thing for certain. You survived. 200 years in the darkness alone with nothing but your own will to keep you going. You did that. The fast is complete because you completed it." "The ship was supposed to come," whispered. "I was supposed to be lifted up and honored. That is how the trial ends. That is how it has always ended." "The ship failed. Your people failed. That is not your fault. You did your part. Whatever comes after is something new, something that was never part of the original agreement. Turned its head to look at Danny, and there was something in those dark eyes that might have been hope mixed with fear. You truly believe this? I know this. Danny crouched down so he was at eye level with the creature. Let me tell you something about humans. We are not good at giving up. We are stubborn and foolish, and we refuse to accept defeat even when defeat is staring us right in the face. When my wife was dying, the doctors told us there was no hope. They said we should accept it and prepare for the end. But she did not accept it. She fought every single day, not because she thought she would win, but because fighting was who she was. Did she survive? Danny's voice caught in his throat for a moment. No, she did not. But she died on her own terms, still pushing back against the darkness. And I learned something from watching her. I learned that the struggle itself has meaning, that refusing to give up is its own kind of victory, even when you lose. Was silent, considering his words. Danny could see the conflict playing out across the creature's face, the battle between centuries of tradition and the simple desire to live. Your wife sounds like she was remarkable, said finally. She would have liked you, I think. She always said I was too quick to follow the rules without questioning them. She would have told you the same thing I am telling you now. The rules serve their purpose. Now it is time to write new ones. Danny reached into his backpack and pulled out a protein bar and a bottle of water. He held them out toward, his hands steady and his eyes certain. Your fast is over, he said. You completed it. Now it is time to live. Not because your traditions say so, but because you deserve to. Because 200 years of suffering has earned you the right to choose what comes next. Looked at the food and water in Danny's hands. Such simple things. Such small packages containing what might be the difference between life and death. The creature's thin fingers trembled as they reached out, hesitated, and then finally closed around the bottle of water. I do not know if my people will understand, said softly. Then we will make them understand. But first you need to be strong enough to face them. Danny helped sit up, moving slowly and carefully. The creature's body was so light, almost hollow, as if the bones inside were made of paper. He opened the water bottle and held it to his lips, watching as the alien drank in small, careful sips. This tastes strange, said after a moment. It is just water, regular earth water. No, it tastes like something I had forgotten. It tastes like the choice to continue. Danny smiled, the first real smile he had felt on his face in a very long time. That is what hope tastes like. I had forgotten it too for a while, but it comes back. It always comes back if you let it. Above them, the hurricane continued its destruction. But down in the bunker, something new was being built. A connection between two species that had never met before. A friendship formed in darkness and sealed with a bottle of water and a protein bar. It was not much, Danny thought. But sometimes the smallest things were the ones that mattered most. The hurricane passed sometime during the night. Danny knew because the constant rumbling and shaking finally stopped, leaving behind a silence that felt almost unnatural. He had fallen asleep at some point, his head resting against the edge of his platform, and when he woke the air in the bunker felt different somehow. Cleaner, calmer. Was awake and watching him. The creature looked better than before, though still weak. The skin had gained a slight color, and the dark eyes were brighter and more focused. The food and water had done their work, buying time that had seemed impossible just hours earlier. The storm has passed, said. I can feel it. The vibrations in the earth have changed. Danny stretched and felt his joints pop and crack from sleeping on the hard metal floor. How are you feeling? Weak but alive, thanks to you. He gave more water and another protein bar, this time broken into small pieces that would be easier to digest. The creature ate slowly and carefully, savoring each bite as if it were the most precious thing in the universe. And perhaps, after 200 years of starvation, it was. Tell me more about your people, Danny said. If I am going to help you face them, I should know what I am dealing with. Chewed and swallowed before answering. They are an old species. We were traveling between stars before your kind had learned to use fire. We have seen civilizations rise and fall. We have watched countless worlds bloom and wither. Because of this, we believe we understand the universe in ways that younger species cannot. That sounds a little arrogant. It is. I see that now after speaking with you. We have always believed that our way is the right way, the only way. The sacred fast is just one example of our traditions. We have many others, all designed to test and purify the spirit. We believe that suffering brings wisdom and that isolation brings clarity. And what do you believe now? Paused, looking down at the protein bar in its thin fingers. I believe that wisdom can also come from connection, from sharing experience with others instead of enduring alone. You have given me more understanding in one night than I gained in 200 years of solitary meditation. Danny felt uncomfortable with the praise. I did not do anything special. I just talked to you. Exactly. You just talked to me. You treated me as a person worthy of conversation, not as a strange creature to fear or avoid. You shared your own pain so that I would not feel alone in mine. Among such openness is considered weakness. We guard our inner selves carefully. We do not reveal our doubts or our fears. That sounds lonely. It is. I never understood how lonely until now. They sat together as continued to eat and drink, regaining strength little by little. Danny found himself talking about his life, about the small town where he had grown up, and the woman he had married and the business he had built with his own hands. He talked about the hurricane that had brought him here and the strange twist of fate that had led him to this bunker at exactly the right moment. Do you believe in destiny? Asked, in forces that guide events toward a particular outcome. I never used to, Danny admitted. I always thought that things just happened, random and meaningless, but lately I have wondered. The chances of me finding this place, of the storm forcing me to take this exact path, of my truck breaking down right here, it all seems too unlikely to be coincidence. Perhaps it is. Perhaps the universe has its own purposes that we cannot understand. Eyes grew distant for a moment. Or perhaps we create meaning after the fact because we cannot bear to believe that our lives are truly random. Either way, I am glad I found you, and I am glad you are still alive. Reached out and touched Danny's hand. The creature's skin was cool and smooth, utterly unlike human flesh, but the gesture was unmistakably one of friendship. As am I, Danny Cole, as am I. A soft beeping sound suddenly filled the chamber. Both of them looked around, trying to find the source. One of the machines along the wall had come to life, a small screen glowing with pale blue light. Symbols scrolled across it, the same strange writing that covered the walls. His eyes went wide. That is a communication signal. Someone is trying to contact this location. Your people. It must be. Only technology would be compatible with these systems. Danny helped off the platform, supporting the creature's weight as they moved toward the machine. Touched the screen with trembling fingers, and the symbols changed, forming new patterns that meant nothing to Danny but clearly meant everything to the alien. It is a search signal, said, voice filled with emotion. They are looking for me. After all this time, they are still looking. Can you respond? Work the controls, its movements growing more confident with each passing moment. A sound came from the machine, a voice speaking in the language, answered in the same tongue, and Danny watched an exchange that he could not understand but could clearly feel. There was surprise in the voices and relief and something that might have been joy. Finally turned to him. A ship is coming. They have locked onto this location. They will be here within the hour. Danny felt a strange mix of emotions, relief that would be rescued, happiness that his new friend would survive, but also a sadness that he could not quite explain, a sense that something important was coming to an end. What will you tell them, he asked, about me, about what happened here? Placed a hand on his shoulder. I will tell them the truth. I will tell them that a human saved my life, and I will tell them that everything we believed about your species was wrong. Danny followed up the passage and pushed open the heavy metal door. Sunlight flooded in, so bright after the hours of darkness that he had to shield his eyes. The air smelled fresh and clean, washed by the storm that had nearly killed him. The forest around the bunker was devastated. Trees lay scattered everywhere, their roots torn from the earth by the fury of the hurricane. Branches and leaves covered every surface, and somewhere in the distance, Danny could hear the sound of rushing water. But the sky above was clear and blue, and the sun was warm on his face. Your world is beautiful, said softly, looking around with wonder. I have never seen it in daylight. For 200 years I only knew the darkness below. It has its moments, Danny agreed, though right now it looks like a mess. They made their way to a small clearing where the fallen trees created an open space. Was still weak, leaning heavily on Danny's shoulder, but the creature seemed determined to be standing when its people arrived. Pride, Danny supposed. Even after everything that had happened, some things did not change. They did not have to wait long. A sound came from above, a low humming that grew louder and louder until Danny could feel it vibrating in his chest. He looked up and saw something descending through the clouds, a ship unlike anything he had ever imagined. It was sleek and silver, shaped like a teardrop, with lights running along its surface that pulsed with a soft blue glow. The ship landed in the clearing, settling onto the ground with barely a sound. A section of its hull slid open, and figures emerged. They were tall and thin-like, but they moved with strength and purpose. They wore clothing that shimmered and shifted color as they walked, and their dark eyes swept across the scene with obvious intelligence. The leader of the group was larger than the others, with markings on its face that might have indicated rank or status. It approached with measured steps, and when it spoke its voice was deep and commanding. "Of the third circle you live. I live, though not by your doing." The one called stopped a few feet away, its eyes moving to Danny. There was suspicion in that gaze and something else that might have been discussed. "Who is this creature?" "This is Danny Cole. He is human, and he saved my life." A murmur ran through the group of. They looked at Danny with expressions he could not read, and he felt suddenly very aware of how strange he must appear to them. A small, soft being from a young world, standing in the wreckage of a forest beside one of their sacred pilgrims. "You accepted aid during the fast," said. Its voice was cold now, accusing. "You violated the sacred conditions." "The conditions ended when you failed to retrieve me," replied calmly. 3 days ago, my fast was complete. I waited for a ship that never came. What happened after that moment was no longer bound by the original agreement. That is not for you to decide." "Then who decides? The council that abandoned me, the traditions that would have let me die in the darkness without reason." His expression hardened. "You speak dangerous words." "I speak the truth. I have had 200 years to think about our ways. I believed in them once, believed with all my heart. But now I have seen something else. I have seen what it means when someone chooses to help a stranger, not because of tradition or duty, but simply because it is the right thing to do." Gestured toward Danny. This human had nothing to gain by helping me. He did not know what I was. He did not know if I would harm him. He was running from a storm that could have killed him, and yet when he heard my voice in the darkness, he came toward it instead of away. He gave me his own food when he did not know if he would need it himself. He sat with me through the long hours, keeping me company, sharing his own pain so that I would not feel alone. The clearing was silent. Even the wind had stopped, as if the universe itself was listening. "Among the," continued, "we believe that the sacred fast reveals truth through suffering. We believe that isolation purifies the spirit. But I learned more truth in one night with this human than I did in 2 centuries of solitary meditation. The truth is not found in suffering alone. It is found in connection, in compassion, in the simple act of caring for another being without asking what you will receive in return." Looked at Danny with new eyes. The suspicion was still there, but it was joined now by something else. Curiosity, perhaps, or the beginning of understanding. "Is this true?" asked Danny. "Did you help our pilgrim knowing nothing of who or what you were saving?" Danny shrugged. "I just did what anyone would do, at least what anyone should do. Where I come from, you do not leave someone to die alone if you can help it. It does not matter who they are or where they come from." "Anyone would do this," repeated slowly, as if testing the words. "This is what humans believe." "It is what I believe. I cannot speak for all of humanity. We are a complicated species. We have done terrible things to each other throughout our history, but we have also done beautiful things. We have sacrificed ourselves for strangers. We have crossed oceans and climbed mountains to help people we have never met. When there is a disaster, we come together. When someone is hurting, we reach out." Stepped forward stronger now than before. "This is what I will tell the council. I will tell them that everything we believed about humans was incomplete. We saw them as young and primitive, not worthy of our attention. But we were wrong. They have something that many older species have lost. They have compassion that is not bound by tradition or expectation. They help simply because they can." There was a long moment of silence, then nodded slowly. "I will take your words to the council. I make no promises about how they will be received, but I will ensure that you are heard." Turned to Danny and placed both hands on his shoulders. "Thank you, Danny Cole. I would not be alive without you, and my people would not have this chance to learn if you had not shown me a different way." Danny felt his throat tighten. "What happens now? Will I ever see you again?" I do not know what the future holds, but I promise you this. I will return to my people and I will tell them about humanity. I will tell them that there is a species on this small blue world that deserves to be known. And perhaps, in time, we will come back. Not as observers hiding in the darkness, but as friends reaching out in the light. Embraced him then, a gesture that felt strange but also entirely right. And then they turned and walked toward the ship, its people following close behind. At the entrance, looked back one last time and raised a thin hand in farewell. The ship rose silently into the sky and vanished among the stars. Danny stood alone in the ruined forest for a long time, looking up at the empty blue expanse. Then he turned and began the long walk back to what remained of his town. There would be work to do, as always. Rebuilding to manage, neighbors to help, a life to put back together. But now he knew something that he had not known before. Somewhere out there, beyond the clouds and the atmosphere and the endless darkness of space, humanity had a friend. And sometimes that was how the biggest things started. With a storm, with a stranger, with a simple choice to stay instead of run. Danny smiled and kept walking.